Welcome to New York Got Game.
Dexter, Henry, Stefan, Bondy coming to you after Knicks Media Day. Basketball is almost here, Steph. A lot of interesting things said at Knicks Media Day. So what were some of your biggest takeaways?
Well, there were a lot. I mean, I thought this was a pretty eventful media day just in terms of the information we gathered. Mike Brown, we knew he wanted to play fast, but he reiterated that. He said one of the key components, not just getting up and down, it's about getting to the corners faster than you used to than you're used to. So I think that was one element, and part of that is Jalen Brunson playing off the ball a little bit more. That was discussed, kind of like Jalen in this almost Steph Curry role, playing off the ball, getting the easy catch and shoots when his teammates hit the paint and spray it out for him. So I thought that was one of the important emphasis. The other thing was Josh Hart revealed that he re-aggravated his ring finger on his shooting hand, and this was a problem that he had throughout the offseason, and then obviously there was some sort of setback. He said he might have to wear a splint, or he's planning on wearing a splint to start the season. So that's something we're going to have to monitor. And I think that there was also Mikal Bridges talking about how he took a discount to play, for the Knicks, and how important it was not to be selfish and kind of, practice what you preach with sacrifice. So there were some takeaways here, and I think that, one I forgot to mention is the starting lineup.
Right.
We don't know what the fifth starter is going to be. I think we pretty much have locked in the top four. The fifth starter, Mike Brown was not ready to commit to that. And that's something we're going to have to watch throughout preseason.
All right, so a lot of interesting things and takeaways there. Let me start with Josh Hart here, because this kind of connects to the starting five. He's got the injury to his ring finger re-aggravated. It says he likely will have to wear a splint throughout the season. Do you think that could have an impact on whether he is a starter or not?
It could. I mean, if he's coming in there and he can't shoot threes, or he can't play the way that he's accustomed to playing because he's bothered by his finger, that's obviously going to be an issue. And listen, Josh Hart has been a streaky shooter throughout his career. He obviously could not shoot or get up the practice shots that he would have liked this summer because of that finger. If he's coming in and he's wearing a splint and it's bothering him in any way, that's going to impact his game. And, if he's going to be hindered in any way, that could impact the decision to start him or not to start him.
Yeah, it absolutely could. Now, in terms of starters, this is the thing fans want to know. We don't know all the things about who's starting, but I want to know this from you, Steph. What do you think is the best starting five for the Knicks? The options could be putting Deuce McBride in the starting lineup. It could be Josh Hart in the starting lineup. It could be Mitchell Robinson in the starting lineup. And you and I even talked about this off camera. It could be Guerschon Yabusele as an option in the starting lineup. What do you think is the best starting lineup that you'd like to see for this Knicks team?
Well, I'm not saying it would work, but what I'd like to see more of is Deuce McBride playing with Jalen Brunson. And that means putting him in the starting lineup just to see what it would look like. I think that, it did work when we saw it in limited action before. In last season, but I don't think it's something Tibbs felt comfortable with because of the size problem. Now, McBride is a tenacious defender. I think he can make up for a lot of the issues that Jalen Brunson has on that end. Size could be an issue, though. Miles McBride is a two-guard in a point guard's body. So, I think that there's some upside there if it gets more of a look. I thought, Tibbs could have went to it a little bit more in the Pacer series. I understand McBride had a big problem guarding TJ McConnell, and that kind of hindered how much he played in that series. But it is something I'd like to see, and maybe Mike Brown experiment with it in preseason.
Yeah, so something I would like to see too, because you get a little bit of the five out. You talk about the defensive possibilities that you have with Deuce McBride here. You talk about experimenting, and we know the Knicks are going to play 2 preseason games to start in Abu Dhabi, which Steph will be at. But do you think we could see some differentiation, in the starting five from Mike Brown in those first 2 preseason games against the Sixers?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's possible that he experiments with different lineups and see what's worked best. But I do suspect, listen, if you're going to take somebody like Josh Hart out of the starting lineup, an established kind of leader on this team, it wouldn't be smart to just switch it every game and put players like that through that situation. I suspect that if he does commit to something in the first game of preseason, that's something he's going to try to ride with for a little bit.
All right, so that's going to be very interesting to watch too. Another thing that we saw or we heard from Mike Brown is he talked about depth, something the team addressed this offseason. He said they could go 9 or 10 deep. Do you think that's best for this roster right now?
Yeah, I think it's a much deeper roster than it was last year. And, I know Tibbs got criticized for this. And listen, we saw in the Pacers series and how the Thunder did that having a deep roster with different options can really be helpful in the playoffs. But the Knicks really didn't have those options last season. Now they do. The front office did, I think, a pretty good job, really good job, building out this bench, considering all those restrictions they had, with the second Abram. And now you have a legitimate, if you look down the list, you could have a 10-man rotation of veteran players and players who are proven in this league and say, all right, this is a possibility. Now, some of it is dependent on, is Malcolm Brogdon going to be the player that he was before? He obviously dealt with injuries last season, and he played on a tanking Wizards team. Jordan Clarkson took a big step back last season, but that was with a very bad Utah Jazz team. So we're going to have to see those guys in game action and in the Mike Brown system to know what the Knicks really have there. But on paper, this is a deep team and a team that can really go 10 deep.
Yeah, it can. It'd be nice to see him go 10 deep. No, the fans, minutes, please. I know you definitely want to see that. Now, we also heard Mike Brown talk a lot about pace. Pace is interesting stuff because people often think about it in terms of playing faster, but it's also about the ball movement, too. And Mike Brown talked about the ability to get Jalen Brunson in particular freer for shots playing off the ball. Do you think that's something that can work well for Brunson and maybe help this team late in games when he's on the ball more?
Yeah, I'm interested to see. Jalen Brunson, to me, was at his best when he's able to have the ball in his hands and he's dissecting the defense with his footwork and drawing fouls or getting to the hoop. I think moving him off the ball is something that he did in Dallas when he was obviously teammates with Luka Doncic, but I feel like he's at his best when he does have the ball. And this is a situation where, even going back to last season, there was a lot of talk about let the other guys eat in the first three quarters, whether that's Mikal, OG Anunoby. Let those guys do their thing and then give the ball to Mr. Captain Clutch down the stretch. I think that's the plan going into this season. Mike Brown talked about it. He said he's going to have the ball. Jalen Brunson's going to still have the ball down the stretch. But earlier in the game, let those other guys kind of get more involved, keep them happy, get the more of a community offense, and give the Knicks a different look.
Yeah. A little bit of offensive diversity could look good for this Knicks team. Now, we also heard from Mikal Bridges. We heard from karl-anthony Towns here. But Bridges in particular talked about his contract extension, talked about taking the discount there. And it's a different energy to Mikal Bridges, would you not say today?
Yeah, I obviously interviewed him a lot last season. Even when he was with Brooklyn, this was the loosest I've seen him. It felt like he's comfortable, and obviously $150 million in your pocket will do that. But I think it's more than that. I think when he got there, he was kind of unsure of himself, and then there was the stuff with him and Tibbs about the minutes. He just wasn't comfortable. I feel like the criticism he was getting to him. But now he's in a more comfortable position. He's set here. He's going to be here for the next few years, barring a trade. And you could really feel that, in his interview. I thought he was very comfortable.
Yeah, thought he was too. You could feel that energy for sure. Okay, so media day is over. Training camp starts tomorrow. Then the Knicks will head out to Abu Dhabi where they'll play 2 games against Sixers. Steph will be there. Steph, what are you keeping your eye on? And I know you don't get to see much of practice, but what are you keeping your eye on with the Knicks as training camp opens?
Who's going to be in that starting 5? We know who the top 4 are. Like I said, it's going to be who's that 5th guy. And, I want to see Deuce McBride just out of, to give us more an example about what that might look like. But there's other options. You mentioned them, Mitchell Robinson, Gershon Yabusele. So, who is going to be that 5th guy? It could be Josh Hart. So we'll see. And I tend to think that whoever's the starting 5 in that first preseason game, Mike Brown is going to give that a longer, extended look.
That's going to be interesting. October 2nd is the first preseason game. Look, saved me. That's a good look. That's what a good teammate does. October 2nd is that first preseason game. Knicks have 2 games against the Sixers in Abu Dhabi. Stefan Bondy will be heading there. And you told me you might ride a camel. Is that correct?
I could. You might see me and Steve Popper from Newsday on a camel.
We'll talk about little Giants Eagles on that too?
Well, it's not much of a conversation.
That's another story for another day. Media day. It is a wrap. Training camp begins tomorrow. That's Stefan Bondy. I'm Dexter Henry.